The champagne glass caught the light from the Edison bulbs overhead, and for a second, I thought my mother was going to toast me. It was my birthday, after all. 40 years old, and I'd chosen this place, the kind of upscale steakhouse in Phoenix where the napkins are linen and the servers wear vests, because I wanted one nice thing. The hum of conversation filled the space around us, low and warm. My daughters sat across from me, their faces glowing in the dim light, forks paused over their desserts. And then my mother stood, tapping her glass with a knife, and I felt something shift in the air before she even opened her mouth. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice bright and performative, carrying across our table. She looked at Claire, my younger sister, who sat next to her with that half-smile I'd seen 1,000 times. The one that meant she already knew what was coming. I didn't. Not yet. "We've been thinking," my mother continued, still smiling, still holding that glass up like a trophy, "and we've decided that the trust fund from your grandfather, Jessica's trust fund, is going to be redirected to Claire. She's going through such a hard time with the divorce, and she needs it more." The restaurant kept humming. Silverware kept clinking. My husband Marcus's hand found mine under the table, his grip tight and sudden. My daughters looked confused, their eyes darting between the adults. And I just sat there, frozen, watching condensation slide down the side of my water glass, slow and deliberate, like the world hadn't just tilted off its axis. This wasn't the first time they'd chosen her. But it was the first time they'd tried to take something that was legally, irrevocably mine. I grew up in Sacramento in a house that always felt too small for 4 people. My parents had Claire when I was 5, and from that moment on, everything shifted. She was the baby, the delicate one, the one who needed more attention, more grace, more everything. I was the responsible one. The one who didn't need help because I'd learned early not to ask for it. By the time I was in middle school, I was packing my own lunches, doing my own laundry, making sure my homework was done. Claire got help with everything. I watched my mother sit with her for hours, working through her math homework, while I sat in my room alone, figuring it out on my own. When Claire struggled in high school, they paid for a tutor. When I struggled, my dad told me to try harder. I did. I always did. I put myself through college on scholarships and 2 part-time jobs. Claire went to a private liberal arts school our parents paid for, and she dropped out halfway through her junior year to find herself. She never went back. I graduated summa cum laude, got my MBA, and built a career in pharmaceutical sales that took me from entry-level rep to regional director by the time I was 34. I bought my first house without asking them for a dime. I married Marcus, a good man who taught chemistry at a public high school and loved our daughters with a steadiness that still made my chest ache. We lived in a modest ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Every payment, every repair, every memory, ours. Claire became a lifestyle influencer. She posted photos of herself in athleisure, holding smoothies, standing in front of walls painted millennial pink. She made maybe $25,000 a year, if that. Our parents bought her a $680,000 condo in Scottsdale and told me it was an investment property. When I asked why they'd never helped me with a down payment, my mother said, "You didn't need it, honey. You've always been so independent." Independent. That word tasted like metal in my mouth. And then 6 years ago, my father's business failed. Some bad investments, some worse partners, and suddenly they were drowning. I got the call on a Tuesday night. My mother, crying, asking if there was any way I could help with the mortgage. Just for a few months. Just until they got back on their feet. I sent them $2,200 every month for 6 years. 72 months. That's $158,400. I never asked for it back. I never even mentioned it to Marcus until 2 years in, when he noticed the automatic transfer and asked what it was for. "Helping my parents," I said simply, and he just nodded. Because that's what we did. We helped. Claire never sent them a dime. The birthday dinner had been my idea. I'd invited my parents, my sister, Marcus, and the girls. I wanted one nice evening, one celebration that felt like what I'd worked for all these years. I made the reservation. I paid for all of it, Appetizers, steaks, sides, desserts, the bottle of wine my parents ordered without asking the price first. The bill was going to be over $400. I didn't care. It was my birthday, and I wanted to feel, just once, like I was worth celebrating. We were halfway through dessert when my mother stood up. I thought she was going to toast me. Maybe say something nice about my career, my family, the fact that I'd just been promoted to sales director for the entire Southwest region. A job that came with a $185,000 salary and benefits that finally let me breathe a little easier. Maybe she'd acknowledge that I'd been there for them, quietly, consistently, for years. Instead, she announced that they were giving away my inheritance. We've decided that the trust fund from your grandfather is going to be redirected to Claire. The words hung in the air, sharp and surreal. I watched my sister's face, waiting for surprise, for protest, for something. But Claire just looked smug. She knew. She'd known before we even sat down. She needs it more, my mother continued, her voice taking on that syrupy, reasonable tone she used when she was trying to make something cruel sound like common sense. You have a good job, Jessica. You have Marcus. You'll be fine. Family helps family. My father nodded silently, his eyes on his plate. He wouldn't look at me. I felt Marcus tense beside me, his hand tightening around mine. My older daughter, 11 years old and too smart for her own good, whispered, "Mom." I shook my head slightly, a tiny motion that meant not now. "That's not how trusts work," I said quietly. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm, too level. "Well, it's what we've decided," my mother said, still smiling, like this was a done deal, like my opinion didn't matter. "Claire's going through her divorce and she's struggling. You understand." I understood. I understood that they'd looked at both their daughters and decided, once again, that I was the one who could handle being gutted. That I was strong enough, successful enough, stable enough to lose $850,000 and be fine. That Claire, at 35, still needed to be coddled and rescued while I, at 40, could just keep carrying the weight. "Grandpa left that money to me," I said, my voice still eerily calm. "It's in an irrevocable trust with my name on it. Trusts can be changed, sweetie," my mother said, waving her hand dismissively. "It's all family money anyway. And you know how your grandfather was. He made that decision when you were in college. Things are different now." Claire finally spoke, her voice sugary and false. "I really appreciate this, Jess. I know you get it. You've always been the strong one." Something in me went very, very still. I looked around the table. At my mother, holding that champagne glass like a weapon. At my father, still refusing to meet my eyes. At Claire, smirking behind her water glass. At Marcus, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. At my daughters, confused and uncomfortable, sensing that something was wrong but not understanding what. I'd paid for this dinner. I'd paid their mortgage for 6 years. I'd paid, in 1,000 invisible ways, for being the daughter who didn't need saving. And now they wanted me to pay with the one thing my grandfather had made sure I'd have, the one thing that was supposed to be protected, untouchable, mine. Part of me had always known this moment would come. Not this exact moment, maybe, but some version of it. The moment where they'd ask for too much, take too much, expect too much. The moment where I'd have to decide what I was worth. "I need to make a call," I said, setting my napkin on the table. My hands were steady. That surprised me. "Excuse me." I walked out of the restaurant into the warm Phoenix night, the air still holding the day's heat, and I stood under the valet awning with my phone in my hand. The parking lot lights buzzed softly overhead. I could hear the muffled sounds of the restaurant behind me, laughter and music and the clink of glasses. I pulled up my contacts and found the number for Richard Morrison, the estate attorney who'd administered my grandfather's trust when he died 11 years ago. I'd met with him exactly once, when I was 29, to sign the paperwork confirming me as the beneficiary. He'd been kind, methodical, the kind of lawyer who explained everything twice and made sure I understood every word. I typed out an email because it was Sunday night and I didn't expect him to answer a call. "Mr. Morrison, I'm sorry to contact you after so many years, but I need your help. My mother is claiming she has the authority to redirect my grandfather's trust fund to my sister. She says it's family money and the trust can be changed. I need to know if that's true, and if it isn't, I need to know what my options are. Thank you, Jessica Hartley. I hit send and stood there in the warm night air, listening to the buzz of the lights and the sound of my own breathing. Inside, my family was still sitting at that table, probably wondering why I'd left, probably deciding how to spin this when I came back. My mother would play the victim. My father would stay silent. Claire would roll her eyes and make it about her divorce, her struggles, her needs. And I would walk back in there knowing, finally, what I should have understood years ago. That love, in my family, only ever flowed one direction. I walked back into the restaurant and slid into my seat. The table had gone quiet, the kind of silence that felt like everyone had just been talking about me. My mother's champagne glass sat empty now, a lipstick stain on the rim. Claire was scrolling through her phone, trying to look bored. My father still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked quietly. "Fine," I said. "Just needed some air." My mother leaned forward, her voice taking on that concerned tone she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. "Sweetie, I know this is a lot to process, but it really is what's best for the family. Claire needs." "I'd like to go home," I said, looking at my daughters. "Girls, grab your things." We left. I paid the bill on the way out, adding a generous tip for the server who'd had to witness whatever that was. My mother called after me, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. The call from Richard Morrison came Tuesday morning while I was in a sales meeting. I stepped out into the hallway, my heart pounding in a way that felt both terrifying and clarifying. "Miss Hartley," he said, his voice calm and professional, the same tone I remembered from 11 years ago. "I got your email. I'm very sorry to hear about this situation. But I have good news." I pressed my back against the cool hallway wall, focusing on the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, the sound of voices muffled behind closed conference room doors. "Your mother has no authority whatsoever over your grandfather's trust," he continued. "The trust is irrevocable, which means it cannot be changed, modified, or redirected. The bank, First Regional Trust Company, is the trustee, not your mother. She was never named as trustee and has no legal standing to make any decisions about the trust funds. You are the sole beneficiary. That $850,000 is yours alone, and it always has been." I closed my eyes. Something in my chest loosened, just slightly. "Can she legally claim otherwise?" I asked. "She can claim whatever she wants," Richard said, his tone shifting to something sharper, more protective. "But if she continues to make false representations about the trust, especially if she's trying to coerce you into signing anything or giving her access to those funds, that could constitute fraud. At minimum, it's fraudulent misrepresentation. We can put a stop to it immediately." "How?" "I'll send a cease and desist letter on your behalf. It will make very clear that she has no authority, that any claims to the contrary are false, and that continued misrepresentation could result in legal action. I'll also contact the bank to put an extra layer of protection on the account, just to be safe." I thought about my mother standing in that restaurant, holding that champagne glass like she'd already won. I thought about Claire's smirk, my father's silence, the casual cruelty of announcing this at my birthday dinner, in front of my children, like my feelings didn't matter because I was strong enough to handle it. "Do it," I said. The letter went out that afternoon. Richard emailed me a copy. It was 2 pages, typed on law firm letterhead, every sentence precise and devastating. It outlined the trust structure, cited the irrevocable nature of the document, named me as the sole beneficiary, identified First Regional Trust Company as the sole trustee, and stated in no uncertain terms that any further claims about redirecting, modifying, or accessing the trust would be considered fraudulent misrepresentation and could result in civil and criminal action. I printed it. I read it 3 times, sitting at my desk in my quiet office, the afternoon light slanting through the blinds. Paper doesn't lie. People do. My mother called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. By the 5th call, I answered. "How dare you," she hissed, her voice shaking. "No more sweetness, no more performance. How dare you sick a lawyer on me? I'm your mother. And I'm your daughter," I said calmly. "The one whose trust fund you tried to steal." We weren't stealing anything. We were trying to help your sister. Family helps family, Jessica. I've been helping family for 6 years, I said. I've sent you $2,200 every month. That's $158,400. Did Claire help? Because I worked for it. Because I made choices and sacrifices and built a life. And now you want to take the one thing Grandpa made sure I'd have because you think I can handle losing it. You're being selfish, she said, her voice rising. Your sister is going through a divorce. She has nothing. She has a $680,000 condo you bought her. That's not the same. You're right, I said. It's not. Because I bought my own house. I built my own life. And I'm not giving you my inheritance so you can keep pretending that Claire's struggles are more important than my boundaries. She hung up on me. My father called 10 minutes later. His voice was tired, defeated. Jessie, please. Don't do this. Your mother is beside herself. Did you know? I asked. Did you know the trust was irrevocable? That she had no authority? A long pause. Then, quietly, I thought she'd looked into it. You thought. But you didn't ask. You just nodded along while she announced it at my birthday dinner, in front of my kids, like it was already decided. We didn't mean to hurt you. You just didn't think about whether you would. He didn't argue. I spent the next week documenting everything. I pulled 6 years of bank statements showing the monthly $2,200 transfers to my parents. I printed emails where my mother had asked for help, and I'd said yes. I found text messages from Claire bragging about trips, purchases, spa days, all while I was quietly covering our parents' mortgage. I organized it all into a labeled folder, statements first, then emails, then texts, then a timeline I'd typed up myself. I called Richard again. I want to be prepared, I said. In case this escalates. Smart, he said. Keep everything. Dates, amounts, context. If they try to claim you owe them something or that this is all a misunderstanding, you'll have proof. There's more, I said. I want to stop the monthly payments. They were supposed to be temporary, and it's been 6 years. But I need to know how to do it without them claiming I abandoned them or owed them ongoing support. You don't owe them anything, Richard said firmly. Those were gifts, not loans. You're under no legal obligation to continue. If you want to stop, just stop. Give them notice if you want to be courteous, but legally, you don't have to. I thought about that word. Courteous. After everything, was I really supposed to be courteous? I'll give them notice, I said. But I'm done. I invited my parents and Claire to a family meeting at a neutral location, a conference room at Richard Morrison's law office. My mother protested. Why do we need lawyers involved? This is family business. But I insisted. If they wanted to talk, this was where it would happen. They showed up on a Saturday morning, all 3 of them. My mother wore a tailored blazer, trying to look dignified. Claire looked annoyed, like this was an inconvenience. My father looked small, hunched, older than I remembered. Richard was already there, sitting at the head of the table with a leather folder in front of him. I sat next to him, my hands folded, my own folder of documents in front of me. Marcus sat beside me, solid and silent. The room was small, windowless, lit by overhead panels that hummed faintly. A water pitcher sat in the center of the table, condensation beating on the glass. No one touched it. Thank you for coming, Richard said, his voice polite and utterly neutral. We're here to clarify some misunderstandings about Mrs. Hartley's grandfather's trust. There's no misunderstanding, my mother said quickly. It's family money. We were just trying to do what's right. Richard opened his folder and slid a document across the table. This is the trust instrument. It's irrevocable, meaning it cannot be changed. Mrs. Jessica Hartley is named as the sole beneficiary. First Regional Trust Company is the trustee. You, Mrs. Hartley, he looked at my mother, are not mentioned anywhere in this document. You have no authority to redirect, modify, or access these funds. My mother's face went pale. She glanced at my father, then at Claire, who was staring at the document like it was written in a foreign language. I was told, my mother started. By whom? Richard asked. She faltered. I just assumed. Assumptions are not legal authority, Richard said, his tone still calm but edged with something harder. What you announced at Ms. Hartley's birthday dinner was a false claim. If you had convinced her to sign anything or give you access to those funds based on that false claim, it would constitute fraud. The word hung in the air. Fraud. My mother's hands trembled. We would never. You already did, I said quietly. All eyes turned to me. You stood up at my birthday dinner and told me you were taking my inheritance. You didn't ask. You didn't discuss. You announced it like I didn't get a say. Because we knew you'd understand, my mother said, her voice breaking. You've always been the strong one, the responsible one. Claire needs. I don't care what Claire needs, I said, and the words felt like breaking a spell. I've spent my whole life being the one who didn't need anything. But I needed a mother who saw me. I needed parents who didn't just assume I'd be fine with being erased. Silence. The hum of the lights felt louder. There's more, I said, opening my own folder. I slid the bank statements across the table. 6 years of monthly payments. $2,200 a month. $158,400 total. You told me it was temporary. It's been 6 years. My father stared at the papers, his face gray. I'm stopping the payments, I said. Effective immediately. My mother gasped. Jessica, we can't afford. Then Claire can help. Or you can downsize. Or you can figure it out the way I've had to figure everything out my entire life. You're being cruel, Claire said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was thin, defensive. No, I said, looking at her directly. I'm being clear. You want the trust fund? You can't have it. It's mine. You want me to keep paying Mom and Dad's mortgage? I won't. Not anymore. You want me to keep pretending that you're fragile and I'm fine? I'm done. Marcus's hand found mine under the table, warm and steady. Richard cleared his throat. No one spoke. We stood. I gathered my folder, tucked it under my arm, and walked out of that conference room with Marcus beside me. Behind us, I heard my mother start to cry, my father's low voice trying to comfort her, Claire's sharp, angry whisper. I didn't look back. 3 months later, I sat in my backyard on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and watching my daughters play on the swing set Marcus had built last summer. The Arizona sun was warm but not brutal yet, the air smelling faintly of citrus from the neighbors' trees. The trust fund sat untouched in its account. I hadn't spent $1 of it. Maybe I would, eventually, college funds for the girls, a new roof, a vacation we'd actually remember. But for now, I just liked knowing it was there. Safe. Mine. My parents sold their house and moved into a smaller condo. Claire got a part-time job at a boutique. They stopped calling after the first month. I didn't chase them. I started therapy. My therapist, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense voice, asked me what I'd learned. That love isn't measured by who sacrifices the most, I said. It's proven by who respects boundaries. She smiled. And that I'm allowed to take up space. I'm allowed to say no. I'm allowed to keep what's mine. Even from family? Especially from family. I still think about that birthday dinner sometimes. The champagne glass catching the light. My mother's bright, false smile. The way my daughters looked confused and uncomfortable, sensing something was wrong but not understanding what. I think about how close I came to just nodding, just accepting it, just letting them take one more thing because I was strong enough to lose it. But I didn't. I chose myself. I chose my boundaries. I chose the life I'd built and the inheritance my grandfather wanted me to have. And in doing that, I didn't lose my family. I lost the version of my family that only worked when I made myself smaller. The version I have now, Marcus, my daughters, quiet Saturday mornings, a future that's mine, is so much better. If you've ever been the strong one in your family, the one who's expected to give and never need anything back, let me know. Tell me where you're watching from. You're not alone. And you're allowed to keep what's yours.